Hi, my name is Diana Wynand, and welcome to my podcast. So glad you're here. Today, my guest is Carole Oglesby, sports psychologist, athlete, coach, writer, and author of the book, Women in Sport from Myth to Reality. I'm an author, too, of the book Lipstick Football. I know you know it, Carole, because you endorsed it on the back with your quote. This book empowers and motivates readers to take their personal dreams straight into the end zone. Well, that's one reason that I am so glad you're here, and I was very grateful for your support of that. And also because you've helped so many women achieve success in the sports field. And then there's a ton of women that you've impacted because of your work, and they don't even know you. So this is an opportunity to just simply say thank you for your body of work, for everything you've done for women in sport, to lift you up, to you like a shooting star here in the sky. Just want other people to know about you. And again, to just say personally and collectively, so glad you're here. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
I'm glad to be here. And I was very glad to get connected in any way with your book. But there's a couple of the principles that you have mentioned that stick with me about leaping, especially. I love the concept. You leap first. I really recommend that book. So,
Well, thank you. It was totally unsolicited. That's great.
but good to talk about mine too. Only I want to mention it was a 1978 published date, so it's been around a while.
Well, you probably have a lot that you could say or add to it at this point, I'm sure. But I want to talk to you about your writing projects, but I want to save that for later. So first of all, you have an E at the end of your name. Who the heck were you named after?
I was intended to be a Christmas baby, so the carol was related to the Christmas carol idea. However, my mother was very much enamored with Carole Lombard. People watching may or may not even recognize the name, but she was a very famous movie star at that time, and she's Carol with an E. So I ended up being Christmas Carol with Lombard attached, and nobody ever puts the E there, so that's a problem.
Yeah, well, I wanted to call that out because it makes you special. So that's great. Well, dude, let's just do a thumbnail of your background. Like, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? No, let's break that down a little bit. Where did you grow up?
Well, my family has Oklahoma roots. My grandmother she's not here now, but she swore that she was actually one of the Sooners. If you know Oklahoma history, you know that they populated the ranches by having a sunrise signal, and people had been waiting in their wagons and things, race in and try to grab off a piece of land. I think 1907. So my grandmother swears that she was in the wagon.
Wow. Oh, that really puts us in that space. Now, did you
Uh,
always know what you wanted to do or what you wanted to become?
I always say that education is our family business, and especially physical education. So my mother, my dad, my aunt, my grandfather, whom I really didn't know, everybody's in education. So I was probably destined to be a teacher somehow, but I didn't know exactly what, but I did love music and I loved sports. And it wound up to be a duel between those two. And because my PE teacher was brand new out of UCLA when I was in high school, and I thought she hung the moon. So I probably went in her direction out to UCLA, which was not the typical route for where I was growing up. My Oklahoma family had come to California by that time.
What was your game? Did you were an athlete? What did you play?
Well, I always say when I'm trying to make it clear to students and young people today what it was like back then, you really didn't have any choice. If there was something available to you, if that was a big if there was something available, that's what you went for. And with me, it was good fortune because softball was in the community where I grew up. My dad could have been a baseball player, but he had a vision problem that kept him from actually going. But he was very good, very highly skilled. And
Nice.
my mother was an athlete. But anyway, so I lucked out and ended up in a sport that I would actually had a fondness for, and played for maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years, a long time.
If your career followed an electrical wave pattern, like there's a sine wave, there's a square wave, the triangle wave, the sawtooth, it goes up and then drops down, and then the pulse, like a wave. It sort of happened in waves. What electrical wave pattern do you think your career took?
Well, that's a hard question. That's a tough one.
Okay.
But-
Just trying to get that sort of trajectory.
yeah, I just want to, say, well, this is tough. This is to the audience out there. This is tough. But I think my wave is the unique thing is that it just doesn't quit. It goes and maybe in a little different direction for a while and then back another way for a while. But I have not ever stopped.
Carole, you've had a long, productive career. Was there a turning point on your career path where you turned right, you could have gone left, where, taken a certain step, a different on-ramp that would have led to some other version of a career or success?
Oh, wow. I think there's a couple of things. Mostly they were on the early part of my career. Once I was launched, I sort of stayed on the path.
Mhm.
But with the early stage, for one, between music and PE, physical
Yeah.
education, that was a big one. That was hard for me to say bye-bye to music. But once you do that, there's a big difference between a major and a minor. At least there was where I was. So that was a big choice, that to have to feel like I needed to make that choice.
Right.
The second thing was had to do with a guy that I kind of had a crush on when I was in band, high school band.
Uh-huh.
He asked me to marry him, and it was like a shock. We never were going anyplace that serious, and all of a sudden, about freshman year in college. So, I was not thinking about anything like that, but it took me by surprise. So it took me a while to say, you know what, I'm not. That's not where I am, and it turned out that was not the way my life was going to go, in with the direction of my career. Um, I decided once I finished the PhD and I had a chance to stay at Purdue and become, and not a grad student anymore, but assistant professor. So I took that. And a lot of times people stay a long time with that
Mhm.
first position. But I rather quickly realized that I was always going to be the former graduate student. There's a
Mhm.
different way that you're seen by the people that have been your mentors. And I wanted to be a full-fledged, player in the game.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I actually went to University of Massachusetts, and that was a high prestige position at that time.
Mhm.
And so I intended that might be a long-term stay, but as many of us have experienced, there was a lot of misogyny in the air at that
Mhm.
campus, and,
Mhm.
in the departments I was in, and I just felt also they're not going to allow me. They're not going to allow me to grow and
Mhm.
to do what I want to do. So I was off again to another new job, which was, it seemed dangerous in a sense at the time. But I went to Temple in Philly, loved everything about that campus, at least everything I can remember. I blocked out the bad stuff, I guess. But so I was there for more than 30 years. So that was my long-term stay.
Mhm. And then what did success mean to you when you started, and what does it mean to you now? That may have been wrapped up in what you just said, as you were looking for something that felt right, for you.
Well, I think what I wanted more than I really wanted to make a difference. I wanted to have what I did change the landscape, because I've tried to explain this in so many ways to students and other people over the years that you just, if you're it's hard to imagine being dismissed, how it feels, and how uh, debilitating it is to be dismissed
Mm-hmm.
completely. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not here.
Mm-hmm.
You can help me. Maybe you can help me do something here, but I'm the one who's doing. So
Exactly.
I wanted to make a difference. And so I think I kept looking for a place where it was going to make a difference. And I felt like I found that at Temple. Now, I think it's still to some extent the same. To feel, I want now, looking back, to think I did make a difference. When I see people that were grad students of mine, many of them are getting ready to retire themselves now,
Uh-huh.
but they're department chairs, or they've gotten some very prestigious award because what a great career they've had. And
Mm-hmm.
and actually some of the people, because Temple is to some extent, it's not a historically Black college. Many people think it is because of where it's located in Philly, but there is a rather high proportion of students of color there, and I'm sure that they had the sense of being dismissed even much more so than I did.
Right. Right.
And now to see what they've done with their careers, it's really it's great.
That's very cool. One of the things I know you were involved in is Title IX, and that was a huge milestone for women in sport and a huge success. And you were there. And how do you feel Title IX fit into your career trajectory? Was it like a pinnacle, like go back like on one of those waves, the electrical waves? Was it a high point? Did you realize at the time how big it was in terms of what you guys were achieving as you worked on it, or was that
Well,
in retrospect?
I'd say yes and no on that. The thing that I've felt and continue to feel is that it was a huge frustration, because if the wording had been carried out,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been much more impactful than it was.
Mm-hmm.
But the meaning of the intention of this of Title IX was so uh, the opposition was never it was unending
Uh-huh.
opposition, and it reduced the impact. I actually just published an article that in a academic journal recently, and I felt I liked the article. I think I made a point that nobody has made before, and that is that, and it was my concept was impacted by a person who was very close to the Obama administration. And so Coates wrote this book about We Were in Power for 8 years. And he made the point of how after World War II, there was a tremendous number of laws passed that were intended to help uh, GIs.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that only white GIs benefited
Mm.
because there were so many rules and regulations and twists and turns. And the men of color who were coming home, um, didn't know about how to maneuver. And so they basically lost out.
Mm-hmm.
And it dawned on me that looking at Title IX, that the main beneficiaries of Title IX have been white men, because what happened with Title IX, the
Oh.
women's sports started to take off. So the NCAA saw it as a prize worth grabbing. And so
Uh-huh.
they took away the AIW. They defeated it by offering a bigger prize. And so the NCAA took over women's collegiate sport. Men and women used to have separate physical education departments, but they got merged because Title IX was saying, you have the same product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when they merged athletic departments and when they merged physical education teacher training programs, men were the chairs. They were the people who got to be chair.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many instances in the athletic department situation, because women's program programming of athletics was different. Almost all the women ADs had doctorates. They had earned doctorates, and they were athletic administrators as well as being academicians. The men, they didn't. They were good businessmen. A lot of them had been former football players.
Right.
So you'd have a woman who had a PhD in a campus athletic department, and she was an assistant AD at best. So
And
I could go
AD is, for the audience, and AD is what?
athletic director. Sorry, athletic director. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, I could go on and on, but I know you.
Well, it's fascinating because I brought that up because this is to highlight the good that you have done and brought and created for others to take advantage of as sort of a leader that steps forward. And what I'm hearing you say is that yes, that was the intent, but there were other underlying currents that happened that were not quite that fulfilling of that promise, right? So
Yes, I don't want to make it sound like there was no impact, because
yeah, there
Title IX
was
was
positive
tremendously
benefit,
impacted.
but there were, yeah, that's really
Yeah.
interesting, Carol. We could talk about that for another hour, I'm sure. But well, a question. Author Simon Sinek asked the question, or made the statement: "We don't learn much when everything goes right. We learn most when things go wrong." So, at what stage of your career or life do you feel you learned the most because they went wrong? And what opportunities did they provide for learning or advancing?
Well, oh my goodness, that's a stumper too. Um, I
Did
I
you
think
Go ahead. Did you hit a snag along the
I
way, and how did you resolve it?
uh, there was always the because physical education was so different for men and women. I
Mm,
mean, that's it makes
right.
for a distinction in the education community. Nobody quite understood, from coming from English or social studies or whatever, because there wasn't a men's and a women's
Yeah, yeah.
English or whatever. But we had tremendous differences, and so it when Title IX did land, and everything was kind of smushed together,
Mhm,
there was a lot of interpersonal issues that were difficult,
mhm.
and I would say, in the end, it probably turned out, as this man suggested, that great progress was made in relation to the men and women in our field perhaps beginning to understand one another a little bit better.
Uh-huh,
Where
uh-huh.
in the earlier times, it was easier to just go, oh, they don't know what the hell they're doing, so
Yeah,
let's just keep doing our separate things.
right,
So
right.
we had to work it out.
Interesting. When you think about your career, um, what are you most proud of? Is there a little stellar nugget that you like to reflect back on and say, "Gee, that was fun," or "I'm really proud of"?
Well, for good or ill, there's a lot of things I'm very proud of. I'm
That's wonderful. That is a wonderful comment. Yeah, that you can look back and say, yeah, there were a lot of things that I am proud of. And yeah, go ahead.
well, uh, it wasn't my work particularly, but because of people that I gained connections to, and I think that I became adept at sort of making the connections work for us
Right,
all.
right.
So um, the people who were in legislature, and particularly the women in government that were trying to impact on legislature, um, they didn't know how to include women's sport in the language of the law. And so I was able to be on a committee. This was way back in the late 70s, early 80s. It was the International Women's Year, and there was a lot of push inside the US government to put out guidance, policy guidance. And women's physical education or sport was never a part of these things. It was just never seen. And so I was part of getting it in there. And so there's publications that were guidance attempts at guiding political people. And similarly with the UN women's organizations, I can't tell you how many times I had conversations with these folks in New York City. I was in Philly, so it was close. I could get to New York City easily and have sessions with these people. And they'd say, "Oh, Carole, you're so sweet, so sweet. And we love sport. The Olympics are great. We love the Olympics, but, we're dealing with genital mutilation. We're dealing with starvation. We're dealing with forced marriages. These are the important things. We can't deal with the sport thing is not what we're keyed into. Well, so we were able to convince them this is not just about who's going to be on the Olympic team. It's what it happens inside the individual girl when she feels like she's got skills and she can lead and she can persevere through pain and, so many different ways. So I felt like I was able, because of a lot of times because of circumstance, but I was in situations where I could make a difference. Like I said, I wanted to do that, and we weren't there, and so I just kept knocking on the door and saying, we belong in there. The sports people, you're missing something if you don't include this. And finally, they started to get the message. One of, I guess I would say adversary, except it's not a fair fight. Gloria Steinem is very famous as a feminist, we know, and she was one of the people that was most adamant to say sport's great, but that's not what we're doing right now. And now she's really backed off. I think it was more Billie Jean King than Carole Oglesby that got the message through. But she has said, I'm so sorry. She said, I'm so sorry. It took me such a long time to realize that sports,
what sports can do for a woman's development and leadership and self-confidence and self-worth. Yeah, yeah. That's pretty amazing that you were able to shine a light on that and try to get people's thinking to come around to the impact sports can have on women across the world too, because I know you're involved in a couple of international women's organizations. Yeah. So yeah. So if your life journey was a sports game, what game would it be? Doesn't have to be the game you played, but in terms of the trajectory, the pace, the process, would it
it's marathon. I think it's marathon.
Oh, okay. A
Yeah, which
marathon.
I got into when I couldn't get the legs to go fast enough around the bases.
Right.
I got into things where it didn't matter how long it took you. The point was how long you could stay in it.
That's
And
great. That's great. Well, if you have,
yeah,
let's say we always like to look and say, okay, you like that term, leave it on the field, leave it all on the field, right? And you've contributed so much to this space. Is there something else that you would like to do? I know you have a project, right? You have a writing project. So now we're going to get the benefit of reading from this point of view, like, sort of 50 years later.
yeah. Well, I am I have never intended to do any kind of a memoir, but here we're getting towards the end, and I'm seeing there's not who's going to do it. If I don't do it, I'm looking around. There's not that many people that are around to cover some of the things that I would cover. So I want to get across an idea, and it has to do with some of the questions that you've asked also. That we have a gift, the body, and not just the physical body, but the psychological, the emotional. We've got all of these gifts bundled together in this package, more or less. And I think that if all people, women and men alike, all people will benefit if they stay connected to the package and try to keep adjusting who they want to be at that moment to the changes that are happening, not only in the package, but where the package is taken in life. The geographic changes that I have benefited from have caused me to pick up things like rollerblading or cross-country skiing. I'm a Californian. I would never be doing these things, but what you wind up someplace that you didn't know you were going to go, but if you can work it so that you take the package along with you, the benefits. I just when I try to describe to people what it was like for me as a kid to work on my sports skills, and especially baseball, because
Right.
that was my way of connecting to both my father and my mother, and we had stair steps in front of the house. It's like when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I would throw a rubber ball against the stair steps, and depending upon where the ball hit, it would bounce left, right, up, down, short, long, up. Every throw was a different thing, but if I could stay with it and catch it, it was like endlessly amazing. I must have spent hours throwing this ball against the steps. I mean, it was like crazy. I should have been maybe studying or learning how to do something else, but I feel like I benefited greatly from all of that. Anyway, it's just staying with the package and claiming it,
So you
and
were feeling the joy of that interconnectedness of being of appreciating the embodiment and the action and the flow and the movement and the coordination and all of that. That was sounds like it was just a joyous experience for you.
It was, especially, and you mentioned coordination. I think that's one of the great contributions, because you're thinking and looking at where the ball is hitting or whatever it is that you're trying to do. You have to pay close attention and see what's going to happen. You have to react to whatever happens. And in seconds or in
Mhm.
milliseconds, really, make decisions about which way you're going to go, and are you going to be looking up or looking down. The coordination,
Right.
it is there's an intellectual aspect to this, and so all of those people that kept telling me that I was a dumb jock, I'm trying to argue against them still.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a good point. Just before we close out on this, you have a message for women. It sounds like you have a message. You want them to embrace something. What is that? What would you say to women? Really of any age, and of about their involvement with sport. What would you say to them?
Well, I've been trying to, in relation to this book that we're talking about, that I'm trying to get to, I have the idea that I've labeled now authentic embodiment, that it is, I was trying to describe by just using the word package, because I mean, that's kind of like very rough language, but it has so many facets. It's
Hmm.
all of the facets, and you coordinate them together,
Hmm.
and it requires some acuity.
Right.
So, people in my age and stage very worried about dementia, and be able to keep many
Mhm.
balls in the air, so to speak, if you're
Right.
juggling. So embodiment with keeping all of this together, and being able to adjust, and and it has to be real to you. So that's the authenticity thing. It's not just I want to look like a movie star, a Meryl Streep, let's say, if I pick somebody a little closer to my age and stage. No, it's not about being Meryl Streep's embodiment. It's authentically Carol, or each of us.
So you think sports is a way or an avenue or a path that women can utilize to connect with that authentic embodiment? Is that, yeah. Now, what if
Yeah.
somebody says, well, I don't, I'm past the school age, so it doesn't make sense for me to join a team. What are the ways today that you would suggest women to experience that you're talking about?
Well, I'm laughing because I have a joke with a lot of people that are in like my age and stage, because so many people have gone to pickleball. And me, the athlete, I want to sort of go sneer, kind of sneer. Pickleball, really? I mean, is that it for you?
Yeah.
But it's great. It's great. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of my friends are like addicted to pickleball.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is for each person. It's going to be different,
Right.
but it's worth the search.
Find your sport, right? To get connected to a sport. Yeah.
We go out shopping for just that right jacket or just that right pair of shoes. This is way more important to me. I think it's way more important than finding the perfect pair of shoes for some uh,
Find
thing
find
you're
the
heading for.
perfect sport that you can exercise your authentic embodiment in.
Yeah, and
That's really a cool concept, Carol. Yeah. Yeah. Very
it
nice.
comes it may be rooted in your the place of your origin.
Yeah.
Being from Oklahoma, I should probably, and I'd love it, horseback riding, or and it can be anything. And California, and I've got the ocean,
Mhm.
and water skiing. Some things you're going to lose. Age takes away certain things, so you just keep trying to.
Mhm.
For what I've ended up with is how many steps I do in a day.
Good.
And that's a long way from playing AAA softball, but hey, it keeps me connected to the authentic embodiment, and so it's a good thing.
That's fantastic. That is great. Well, thank you. You have helped so many people, and I think at least what you said earlier, you wanted to make an impact, and from where I sit, you certainly have. So thank you. I'm so glad you're here, and nice that I was able to learn more about what's important to you, and and understand the philosophy behind your work with women in sports. So very cool. And if the listeners are interested, Carole is such an important figure. She has her own Wikipedia page, which will give you a lot of background and a lot more history. So go check that out. And again, Carole, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate your time. And thank you for all you've done for me and everybody else in the world. So take good care. Thanks a lot.
You too. Bye bye.